You guys think it's better with the mic, or you guys prefer without the mic?
With.
All right, guys. Guys, welcome to UX+DEV Summit, our first year and our inaugural conference. And just want to make an announcement that if anyone wants to get on Wi-Fi, it's the guest_ connection name. So just an FYI. All right. So also wanted to take a moment to thank our sponsors, Syncano at SU for helping out with the venue, Jaya, ProcessMap, and Emerson. Just make sure you guys stop by the booth, and check them out. We also have a lot of good goodies and swagger, so it's pretty good. Also, thank our bronze sponsors as well for helping in with the raffles and the support that they've provided for us. So thank them as well. So a little bit about myself. I have 13 years experience in design and in this industry, especially with user experience. I'm extremely passionate about UX, and one of my hobbies is I just really love beef, and that's my thing. I kid you not, I grill about 4 times a week. So, okay. And last but not least is that I'm very family driven. So what is UX+DEV Summit? And this is an interesting story. So Mike, my partner, and I, one day, we just started talking, just hanging out. And I was telling him how in South Florida, especially in the Miami area, about 4 years ago, there was like this need for like a stronger UX community. And I had started a meetup group called UX Miami. And we had like about 4 to 5 meetups, and they were okay. But I was looking for something more from the meetup group, and especially from the community. So I was talking to Mike, and he was also looking a little bit something more from the dev side of the community. And then we were both nerds, and we said, you know what? Why don't we just make an app? And we're like, all right, cool, let's make an app, and let's test, let's work on material design. Let's see what that's about. And we're like, okay. So we decided to pick one place in Florida where we could really get inspired, a place that we really love, and where our family wouldn't really bother us. So, so we decided to, Disney World was the place. And when we got there, the kids didn't bother us, the wives didn't bother us. They went out to Disney World. It was all great. And we were in the essence of Disney. And that was driving creativity and inspiration. And we decided to go ahead and start creating this app. So let me introduce you to Airlock. So Airlock was our concept. We said we want to build an app in 3 days, test material design principles and concepts, and see how well we do. And what you're looking at here is Airlock essentially is an app that you can unlock it with your voice. You don't need to use a pin. And if you need like an emergency, you can also say a command and it will help like dial 911 or help. It's kind of like a Siri, but just to help unlock the phone. Something simple, so we thought. So as we started the process, we went into, doing quick sketches. We wanted to be really lean. And we had talked about the concept and what we needed. And then we just went gung-ho. 3 days, non-stop. We pretty much slept about 2 hours a day. And we started designing and developing this app. And the screen that you're looking at here is the initial concept of once you install the app, the launch sequence and the setup sequence. So towards the end of this process, we had like an ideal moment. We had like a light bulb moment. And we're like, you know what? I think we're onto something because we identified a need pretty much. And the need was this person that needed to bridge that gap between the design, the experience, and the development side of things. So with Mike, I was saying, hey, you know, like this is the screens, and they have to be this color, and they have to be this pixel perfect, and we need to talk about motion, and we need to talk about layout. And he's like, don't bother me. I'm working on building the product. And then I'm like, well then, you know, shoot, let me learn, and let me see if I can help you out. And then, but when he took the designs in, it didn't quite look polished. It didn't look like, it wasn't like laid out. So that's where we decided where we needed this developer, but we decided, hey, that's a front-end developer's job. And I was like, well, true. You know, front-end developers can take this design, break it apart, put the layout together, and help work with you and, you know, into the angles and make it just like how the designs are. But I'm like, but there's a little bit more to that. Like, what about the experience side? You know, many times I've worked with developers where they really don't care about the front-end developers. They don't really care about the experience. They really care about building and just making it to the actual mock-up. But they don't factor in the motion part, the animation part, transitions, you know, and they don't even factor in about, you know, they'll just put like a drop-down and they don't think about, well, is that really a good experience for it? Like, design can only go so far, and there's that gap in the middle that it's like a translator between the designer and the developer. So that's where we had this aha moment, and we're like, you know what? We really need to like hone in on this and talk about this process and iron out this process. And we did it. We owned it, and we completed it, and we figured out what we needed. And in retrospective to the project, these 3 days we needed a holistic understanding. So the ingredients to this to work was everyone on the team needed an understanding of start to finish, the holistic overview of this product. How we're going to start, how we're going to finish, what's the path, what's the journey like. We also needed to do research. You know, how are people using Siri? How are they using Google Voice? How do we get this data? And how do we get it quickly? So we ended up doing a lot of like on-site user testing where we would go to people, like guests in the hotel, and say, hey, like, you know, what do you use this phone for? Like, what do you do? You know, do you use Siri? Yes, no, why not? And you do, what do you like about it? What do you not like about it? But we needed quick validation and quick feedback and quick data. Then we got a sketch and just started sketching out our low fidelity wireframes. And we started creating this roadmap to how we want everything to start and everything to finish, from the UI, and then from the, I guess, the back end, what he calls it, endpoints, and building the product. But that's Mike's side. He can tell you his version tomorrow. And then, what frameworks? How many times do you have this challenge of what's the right framework to use? You know, do we use a framework? Do we not use a framework? What about guidelines? Should we really stick to these guidelines? Should we not? Like, Apple gives us these guidelines. Google gives us these guidelines. But is it really true? Is it really good for the user experience overall? You know, should we really follow them to the T? And are we savvy enough to really use these frameworks? Like, do we really have the knowledge and the know-how where we can really grab this framework and use it? So these were all the challenges that we were dealing with from the onset. And then we just got started, we designed, and then we struggled really on the front end. On the front end layers where we really struggled the most. And that's why UX and Dev came together and said we need to talk about it, and then we're like, why don't we make a conference and really unite these two worlds? So that's what we're doing. So we feel that there's a growing need for what we call the UX developer. And a UX developer is typically a front-end developer or a developer that's savvy in usability and UX principles, passionate about the user experience and codes with the user in mind. The UX developer bridges the gap between technology and design and is able to think and speak the language of designers. So that's really important because sometimes you get in these meetings and designers saying one thing and the developer is understanding something else, and then the business is like not on board with you or any of the two, and then like they're freaking out because they're like feeling that they're losing grip. And this person is that ingredient, is that person that understands design, understands development, and can bridge that gap. And when they code, they really code about the experience, like how the users are going to be using my product. It's not just, hey, I want to put a form up and then they'll use the input box. No, it's about they're going to use the input box, but how are they going to use it? Is it going to be good for them? Are they going to really see the information? Are they really going to, how are they going to experience that? And that leads to, from the business, how they create the stories, how they develop the product, to design, the ideation, to development, and it should trickle down all the way through the entire development cycle and design process cycle. So why does a company need one? Well, they're a huge asset for a design team and a designer. The UX developer can say, hey guys, the designer can go to that developer and say, hey, what do you think about this idea? Is it possible? Can we use it? You know, and this UX developer, because they're just as passionate as you are, they want to strive to push the bar. They're going to think about, hey, yes, we can do that or we cannot. Or what about, that's what I love, what about this? And then that's when a crazy idea usually comes about, and it's really, and usually they're really good. So, again, it helps solve technological questions for stakeholders and during design sessions. So sometimes you're having a design session or review in your designs, and then the business might answer a question that the designer might not be too comfortable with, and that's when the developer, the UX developer, will come in and then put them at ease and help the project be a success. And you know, they help push the bar in creativity, and they also assist during user testing. So that's important. I personally like to have, when I do user testing, I like to really get the whole company involved. I really like to make an announcement and get as many people there as possible. But one of the few people that I really want there is that UX developer and my dev team. Because when they see users test, they actually get a sense of empathy for the user, and it just drives them more. And when they're coding, again, when they're coding and they're in that design team and they're putting it together, they're always thinking about the user in mind. And that's really key for a good product and good success. And you know, we need to make sure that the UX developer understands the principles of UX. And that's my opening note. Does anyone have a couple questions before we move on to our keynote? Keith.
So you mentioned, developers who understand UX would be, front-end developer would be a good person to be this UX developer. But what about a designer?
The hybrid or the unicorn? Yeah, those are always great.
I'm just trying to rep for the designers in the room. We can go that way too if we want to.
Well, I personally think that a designer that understands some front-end technologies helps, especially when they're designing, because they're not just designing a field, they're understanding of, how does this framework really work? What are the limitations of the framework? And they're not just designing something that is out of the box and then it's unusable. They'll spend probably 2 weeks designing something and then they show and then the dev team's like, we can't do this. And then after they pitch to the business and everything, it's like, we can't do that. And you gotta go back to the board. Yeah. But if you find me a unicorn, let me know so we can hire him. Sure.
What about a pair?
Pardon me?
Instead of using a single person, what about a pair?
Even better.
So just saying you have a developer and a designer that are working in pair as a UX developer.
The concept is valid, yeah. That's right. Even better. Two are better than one. And if they're working in pairs, even better, because then they can evolve that idea. And during the ideation stage is where I think is the most important, where they're really creating and evolving that product. But yeah, definitely. And they're talking about design and technology at the same time.
So the UX developer, is that your concept, or did you discover then just moving it forward?
So I know I've read articles from a couple of years ago that they're talking about a UX developer. I've heard some that they say they don't need it, that it doesn't exist, and I've heard others that have some general comments. But I've been pretty much talking about it for about 4 years now, 4 or 5 years, and to the people who I speak with, they really think I'm a little crazy at that time. But when you actually apply it into process, it just makes sense. It's in, and where I'm working at today, we can see it happening, and you can see the asset and the value to the team, you know. So, and I think moving forward, it's going to be even more solidified.
So, you know, we're all searching for unicorns and rainbows, but, you know, it's like, maybe, what is your approach for taking existing teams and bringing them towards the middle?
So my approach would be to keep the user in mind, you know, and to drive them with passion and try to get where the areas that they focus the most and their skill set and bring them to the table. And then when we're going through that ideation stage, everybody, even a back-end developer that might not know anything about a front end, their ideas are just as valid. So incorporating those ideas and making them feel part of the team is also ingredients to success.
I have this question. To nail down what exactly the UX developer is, in my mind, from what I get is that it's sort of the person that focuses mainly on delivering the HTML and CSS or that aspect of a site. And so they work with the designer closely to be able to bring those designs into reality. But then they also work with the JavaScript developer, one that's integrating, to make sure that they are writing their HTML and their CSS in a way that they can actually use it, they can actually integrate it. And so it's sort of a separation of roles, so that you don't have 5 JavaScript developers all sort of trying to synchronize on their HTML and CSS, which is near impossible to do. So this centralizes that role into one responsibility. Is that right?
I think so. I'll take your word for it. But yes. Anybody else? All right. Well, thank you very much. And let me introduce you to Marcella Messerian, and she will be opening with her keynote.
Take a sip of coffee.